Welcome to the 10x Factors interviews, where we speak to high achievers on what they do differently to get amazing results in their work, business, or investments. Today's guest is Raja Singham, the founder of BAC Education Group. Rajan and I go back a long way. We actually did our law degree together in the UK. And when we came back, he didn't go the usual route lawyers normally do. Instead, he decided to start a law college from scratch at the age of 24. As you probably know by now, BAC is a leading educational institution in Malaysia and the region. Rajan, welcome to the show. You've been running your college for 34 years now. In that time, your college has grown from just 2 stories in a building in Brickfields to a $250 million campus, 6 universities and colleges in Malaysia and Singapore, with learning centers in 13 countries. What would you say is the secret to your success?
Hi, Sean. Great to be here. Old friends from the 80s. And actually, the college was started by Mira, my wife, also your classmate, and me, when we were both like 24 years of age. So she was there to anchor me right from the beginning. And actually, Mira was Sean's friend first before me.
Yeah, we started at the same time,
Yeah, yeah.
right? Same
So,
year. So I got to meet her first, then I met you. Yeah.
yeah. So, thanks so much for having me. I mean, it's an absolute privilege and so much fun to catch up after so long. And okay, what's the secret of your success? Actually, there are so many different things that have contributed to the up and down journey I've had as an entrepreneur. But I think today I want to share one sort of a key lesson, which I think is going to be what all entrepreneurs, businesses, and people will need to look at. That is, in essence, how you need to be adaptable if you're going to stay relevant and if your business is going to be around for a long time. So we've been 34 years this year in business, and we are stronger than we have ever been before. But that has actually come from the fact that one of the key things I've always looked at is working like a startup, always making sure we're looking at what's new, how to change, how to pivot, how to deal with changes that come in. The world is changing at an ever faster rate faster rate than ever before because technological change is now at massive pace. And if you see things like AI, the advent of AI, you see McKinsey talks about 400 to 800 million jobs being lost by 2030. But the key thing is this: in all of these things, the opportunities. The close of before the 19th century, 98% of Americans were actually working on farms. Today, only 2% work on farms and produce greater output than what was done at that time. So the similar sort of thing is going to happen. So while you have all these people who are out there who say now AI is going to come in, it's going to take over everything, we don't need people. But actually what we need is people to embrace AI and work faster using AI, increasing their productivity and so that they can actually have some free time. Because the sad thing about humanity is this: every time we come up with these tools, which are supposed to save our time and make us more productive so that we can have a more balanced life and have less work to do, it doesn't seem to work that way. People end up having more work to do. They
Yeah.
become more productive and they find more things to do and they keep staying as busy as ever. So I think we've got to sort of find that balance. So if you ask me, what I think is the biggest lesson for businesses today, it's how you're going to be adaptable. And I would like to sort of look at that. So key thing is, so let's look at what do we mean by adaptability. If you look at companies like Nokia, Blockbuster, Kodak, these were all giants at their time. Kodak had 95% of the film market. Actually, if you went to any cinema, it was on their film that was being shown on the projectors. They had the boxes on all our cameras, that orange, yellowish, red film. Every one of us had it throughout the 80s, the 90s. And they actually had digital first. But because they were doing so well, they didn't see the need to go into digital because this is where the sense of, in a sense, complacency sort of comes in. You then had Nokia, massive phone company, biggest player then, long before Apple got into the scene. But again, since they were doing so well, they didn't see the need to change. And Blockbuster, they were the biggest video chain in the world. And there was a time when Netflix went to see Blockbuster when they were just starting to ask Blockbuster whether they would invest in Netflix because it felt like the right people to go and see and ask for money. They go and see Blockbuster. Blockbuster looked at it and sort of felt like, we don't need you. They couldn't see it. And true enough, in all of these cases, I mean, Blockbuster just went totally bust. Kodak has now pivoted and come back with something slightly different, but it's more like nostalgic, film. Nokia is now selling weighing scales and health products and trying to sort of be there. In none of these cases did they actually do anything which, I mean, they were considered wrong. I'm running a business, I've got this cash cow, this machine that's generating a lot of business, and I'm fine. But the problem is the mistake they made was not to realize that today every business has to ask itself, what can I do that's a generation better? And that's what guys like Apple, your Teslas, your even Facebook, for the Meta, which it's known now, are all the time asking. And there's always this fear. One of the reasons why Meta goes and acquires Instagram, it goes and acquires WhatsApp, because if anybody looks like they're coming into that space, and when they're big, they would acquire them. You would see this even with Microsoft. So you would think that these trillion-dollar companies, what should be scaring them? The bigger you are, the harder you fall. So for them, when they see an upstart coming up and something, they would spend 50 billion, 100 billion to buy them because they know this could be the threat to their future business.
It doesn't
So you put
matter.
it
It doesn't
across.
matter if they're wrong because the amount that they're spending to acquire isn't as costly as if they didn't do it.
Yeah, if they
It's,
were put out of business, it'd be much,
yeah.
much worse. So, I mean, I always tell my guys, I mean, I got this Darwin's quote, it is not the strongest nor the most intelligent of species that will survive, but the one most adaptable to change. So this is credited to Darwin.
Mm.
The ones who survive, the ones most adaptable to change. Even if you look at your Fortune 500 companies, earlier lifespan of company, they would be like 100 years, 80 years. It's all gone down to like very few companies survive beyond 15 years. So, so this is what every business out there today has to be mindful of. So whether you're an education institution, whether you're running out, because competition can come from anywhere. So like one of the interesting things is I often have seminars and ask people like, okay, we are BAC. Who do you think is our competition? Or I'll say, Coca-Cola, who is their competition? And then when you say Coke, they will almost automatically say Pepsi. And Coke doesn't look at Pepsi as their competition. When they were asked this question, who's your competition? They said every other person we are in the thirst quenching business. So it's every other person who's in the thirst quenching business who's our competition. So for us, the same. We are a law school for BAC. I mean, we have now 6 universities, so we do IT, we run classes in cybersecurity, AI, business, education. I mean, there's almost everything from design, digital marketing, the whole work, data analytics. So we've got because of the 6 universities. But when we originally started, initially, we were a law school. And then if someone took it, everybody was sort of preoccupied. Who's your competition? They say, oh, it's the other law schools that are there. I said, no. Actually, in our case, it's worse than others because actually everybody else, if somebody wants to do medicine, obviously it's going to take him 5 years. He's not going to be studying law. If somebody does engineering or architecture, so we're actually out there competing with a whole range of courses and other areas um, for those people who sort of say, actually, law, that's what I want to do. I think it's an interesting course and I want to do that. And which is why now we have a range of courses in order to attract people in. So with law, we have at one point we had like an 80% market share for many years. We have 80% market share in that market. It was hard to grow it further. So the idea was to then acquire other schools and start replicating that in the schools in other niche areas where we acquired schools that were specialist schools as well and started looking at that. So the key thing is always in whatever business you're running, always ask yourself, okay, where is this headed? What are the possible changes that are going to affect my industry? What can I do that's a generation better? So I give a simple example. When when you and I were young, I remember like when I was young, I traveled in my dad's car. So we would drive from KL to my grandparents' place in Kluang, Johor. And we used to have this cartridge. The cartridge was that you put in the car. It was a massive, quite a big box-like thing with
The
10
eight track,
Yeah, and
eight
as a
track.
kid,
Yeah.
yeah, as a kid who's about 7, 8 years old, it was all quite, you all big wonder, like, hey, they put this in and then guys are singing and you can hear this music from the little box. Then as time went on, then came the cartridge era, they moved to the cassettes. And of course, you have records, but we never listen to records in the car. It doesn't work. So you then have these cassettes. And when these cassettes were there, we were all, quite impressed. But these cassettes, the tape used to keep coming out. And then we had the big pen to sort of put it all back in space, turn it, turn it, turn it. And we think that pen was just invented just to work with these cassettes. So we did that. After the cassettes, which were not really that reliable because these tapes always kept coming out and it's quite annoying, CDs came in. And when CDs came in, we were all very excited. Wow, 10 songs in there. And then came these big changes that you had in the boot, where you can put 20 CDs. So instead of just listening to, 10 songs on a CD, you have 20 CDs, you have 200 songs. And each time when one of these things happened, we thought, wow, this is it. And then people would say, now to collect all the CDs. I won't buy CDs and I'll keep it for the next 100 years. Then from CDs, they moved to MP3 players. Then they store some there, and then came things like Napster, which was initially like, illegally downloading stuff and putting it online. And then finally, you've got your iTunes and your Spotify. Once the infrastructure, your Wi-Fi and your net infrastructure was stronger, then they could actually run. So like companies like Uber or Grab, or if they were there 20 years ago, they wouldn't have survived because you don't have your technology infrastructure in place. But once this came in, you now have 1 million songs at a low subscription, and it's there. But this is what each one of these products was actually there for what? For people who wanted to enjoy music. But each one of these products was a generation better than what was there before. Because earlier you'd have to go and buy an album, or buy a CD, cost you like, if you're a university student, I remember in the UK when you're studying there, like one single £4.95 or £5, be like, oh, can't afford this. Or you buy an album, then you buy an album, you got 9 songs you really don't like and one that you really wanted. Then they've got your singles. But now you all get to share in the cost and then they get to share. But just imagine the music industry, the recording industry, none of them realized that Apple is essentially a company that makes phones,
It's
would
a
come to the
competitor.
platform
Yeah.
and just take the entire industry to a different level and just, it's an entire upheaval. Because all those music companies, recording companies will have been looking at each other's label, like, this music, that's my competition, that's my competition. And all of a sudden you have these guys who come and change the rules. So other than asking yourself, like, you got to sometimes look at this thing about how do you play bigger? How do you rewrite the rules in your industry? These are some of the key things. And I mean, these are all very exciting, but my key lesson I want to tell every business out there today is you have got to be adaptable, because it's very easy to fall into that thing of, I've been doing this for 50 years or 30 years, and I'm going to do it for the next 30 years. It may work. And if that's what you want to do, it's fine. Because sometimes maybe in your life, you are happy. Because I always tell people, if you're happy doing what you're doing and you're not worried about growing and you're not worried after 30 years, I'll close shop and enjoy myself and retire, then it's fine. Because the last thing I want to do is tell people, not tell everybody that, oh, you must always think of scaling, you must always think of growing bigger, you must always, your business should always have, be growing at 20% or 30% a year, and this and that, when you should have 100 branches. It's not for everyone. But what I want to say is sometimes it depends on what makes you happy at the end of the day.
So
So
in terms of your journey in adapting, what were the challenges you had? I mean, um, sometimes you need a lot of funds, just to, acquire some companies or even go into a new tech that you've never been into before. So in your case, as far as BAC is concerned, from law school to becoming, having 6 universities and footprints in so many uh, parts of this region, what were your main challenges?
I think for us, the main challenges have been government, regulatory,
I mean,
because
as far as your industry is concerned, your main challenge will be
the regulatory,
regulation. Yeah.
because we are very regulated. So everything we do. So imagine if you have a restaurant and now you decided you wanted to introduce chicken rice into your menu, you would have to go and apply. You can't just cook chicken
Oh,
rice and start. So you'll have to now go and say, this is my chicken rice I want to make. Then you'll have to say, what is your chicken rice, all the ingredients you're going to use. And then you're going to have to tell them the chef who's going to cook the chicken rice, what qualifications does he have? Is he, got a master's in making chicken rice? Then you've got all, and this is how you got to do it. And then suddenly you say, I want my chicken rice, I want to mix it with duck rice. Or I want to do a chicken rice with, some lamb. And then they'll say, no, you can't. Chicken is chicken, lamb is lamb. You can't mix the two because we've got a chicken body of knowledge and a lamb body of knowledge. So sometimes I think that is where, when institutions like us want to be creative, the authorities are sometimes stuck in things that happened 30, 40 years ago, and they are trailing, and the changes take a long time to be made. At which point, so even if you want to say you want to bring the top industry guys from the technology side to come and teach at the school, they may not have a master's, but they understand tech more than anybody else because that's their day-to-day job. They're not academics. You'd have problems sort of bring them into the curriculum because they don't meet certain criteria. So while you then have, people come out and say, the minister might say this, we're going to do this, or somebody will come out and say this, but the actual workings are much slower. And it's these things that prevent sometimes, say, institutions in Malaysia from being adaptable, because so we have to find creative ways of doing these things. Like, okay, so to give a simple example, okay, I will use BAC is there, like it's a law school. So just before the pandemic, about 10 years ago in 2014, we started a free education platform called EduNation. And we were actually using this to provide free tuition for kids who were doing SPM, PT3, UPSR. Later, after about 4 or 5 years, we then offered multiple platforms. We had a platform called SJKC for Chinese schools primary, SJKT for Tamil schools primary, and then we had the PT3, UPSR, and SPM, these 5, and later IGCSE. These were actually free education platforms that we ran. And we have, during the pandemic, when everybody was stuck and had no content and was wondering what to do, we had 180,000 students who were learning for free on these platforms. So that's like one of the sort of creative type things we did. But because we did that, when the pandemic hit and the nation went under lockdown, it took us only 48 hours to get the entire campus online. And things that we did, which was, say, very different, because that pandemic year was actually one of our best years in terms of revenue, probably our best performing year for the group in the last 10 years, 15 years.
Even though they couldn't attend in person.
Yeah, because what happened was, even the commercial side of it, everything went online, and everyone realized things we did were like, we linked up with LinkedIn Learning, which then gave them access to all the content on LinkedIn Learning with lectures and things by people like Bill Gates and Oprah and Richard Branson and all the corporate guys, the like Anil Gupta and lot from, like Maryland, and, that was one. Then we tied up with Coursera, with the first ones. We brought Coursera in with 270 universities, Google, the, the IBM, digital marketing, and all of that, and universities like Wharton, Yale, Stanford, and embedded those micro-credentials into our courses. So now our students will do our course, but they will also get certificates from Johns Hopkins, Duke, for micro-credentials for all these individual modules, which was something, and it's integrated into our learning management system. Then I got 18 professors from the top universities in the UK. At that time, from like Oxford, Cambridge, London, different, a whole bunch of our partners, and they came in and were lecturing 2 hours a week on the respective subjects, say over a 10-week period, 15-week period. So they would teach the whole curriculum online through that, which then those were the key textbook authors for the respective books. So in each, then we also set up things like we had a virtual, running platform to check people's walking and fitness. We had virtual gym classes. We had, the tons of things we did. But one of the most interesting was the community work. During the pandemic, we helped about 500,000 people working at NGOs, including food aid to 200,000 people, digital training to 8,000 people on courses like digital marketing, data analytics. So about 8,000 people got skilled. Project Entrepreneur, 6,000 entrepreneurs. We did the COVID fund. We did flood relief. That time there were floods in the East Coast. So things like, food aid, the COVID aid was actually getting equipment out. And during that 2 years, that 2020 to 2021, that 2 years, we actually rendered assistance to 500,000 people. But each of these things, because people don't know, they look, this is committee was here. Each of these things was actually building competencies for us, capabilities for us to do things at scale,
Right.
and the ability. And every time, so when we did our free education platform for 10 years, there was something good for community, good for society. A lot of kids benefited from it. We even have our 1 million devices to give out free computers to children for B40 backgrounds or those who don't have access, because there is digital poverty as well. But what was really,
You were creating the future for BAC then.
yeah, in a different way.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, when you need these kind of competencies and capabilities, the team that I had done this kind of work. They have the expertise, they have the ability, and then we can use those things for our own, for the business and find ways. So like now we are doing a lot of work in AI. We are looking at AI and the law. And so like with Unimi, we've got an IT university in the group. So they're looking at the AI side, BAC looks at the law, and we see how do we integrate these things. So I look at it this way. The problem we're going to have is as AI comes in, there are people who are going to lose out. But it's not that AI is going to take the jobs of humans. It's humans with AI who are going to replace humans who are not leveraging AI.
Right.
And our job as an educator or is to make sure our graduates are ready for the future. So to make sure that okay, they have this because then they are adaptable. So the first, I mean, to me, a key challenge sometimes is we move at a faster pace when you're private sector, and we have problems sometimes when the government sector does not move at that pace. And this is where I'm hoping that they get on board, because sometimes they would look at, oh, we are private, they look at favor public institutions, and then they, oh, we got to do here first, you all can't do this, this is. So I give you an example. When the pandemic first hit, we were up and online within 48 hours. I mean, that means over the week, and I think the 18th of March, by 20th, we already, all the classes go online. But initially they came and said, no, you can't teach online. Your approvals are only to teach, say in BAC, your approvals are to teach courses face to face.
Yeah, but
So you're in breach of it if you go online. But for us, the bigger concern is we don't want our students to lose out because they can't be, we are private enterprise. So we have to pivot and offer them the classes online. If they are coming to campus is prohibited because we're under a lockdown or and it's not safe. You see, so it took us some convincing, but at that time, I think only 2 or 3 out of the 400 over institutions in Malaysia were ready
really, yeah.
to go online. And we happened to be ready because of our free education platform, which we had been running for about 6 years before that. Now it's more than 10 years, which meant we had the know-how.
Not just the know-how, but the vision. Even then, right? Even though you didn't know the pandemic would hit, nobody knew. But when it hit, you were so well prepared. You were already trained, actually. All the systems are already in place. So pivoting to online is really not a problem,
It was easy for us. And as a matter of fact, I want to make sure the students had more, which is why we got the UK
right?
faculty to complement. We got a great local faculty here. But all of a sudden, for the kids, it's suddenly like, hey, this is the guy who's written my textbook on contract law, or this is the lecturer of, no, the one who has written the author of the number one land law book or contract book, say in the Commonwealth, and he's teaching me. So I reached out to these people during the pandemic and said, a lot of them after 30 over years are friends, but I reached out to them and said, would you teach for us? And they all thought it was quite an interesting idea. So, I've never actually taught a class out in Southeast Asia this way, because I used to fly some of them. They come out, do a short stint, and go back. But I think that's the key thing, to sort of always ask yourself, what can I do that's a generation better? That's the question I think everybody should be asking themselves. And then how can I break the rules, or rewrite the rules of my industry? And this is what Uber has done. If you look at Uber and you look at Airbnb and you look at all of them, Apple, for example, all of them are people who have rewritten the rules in their industry. And not all of us businesses can sort of look at that. So I actually learn a lot more. I virtually don't look at anything that other education institutions are doing. I generally look for ideas and things outside our industry.
Yeah, that's where you get better ideas and
So, yeah, you
you know,
know,
as far as your college is concerned, or your group of colleges and universities are concerned, what is next that you can reveal? I'm sure there are things that you don't want to reveal as yet, that's fine. But what if you can reveal them, what is next for you guys in terms of preparing for the future? You're talking about being a generation ahead, right? So now AI is here already. So what's the next thing that you'll be doing to sort of skate to where the puck's going to be, lah, so to speak?
okay, I think quite hard to share some of this because we've got our
Yeah,
master plan for the next
right.
three
That, I
years
understand that. Yeah, that's
that's
why I
there.
say if you
But
can say some of
yeah,
it, but if not,
so
it's
but
okay.
to me,
Yeah.
I would look at it this way. One of the things I've been actually, if people have been following some of my graduation speeches and things, in the most recent one, I actually talked about people looking at becoming polymaths because
Polymath. Yeah. Okay.
the thing is, you see, we all go and study one area, we look at one area, we specialize, and that's important. But the real game changers are actually people who are polymaths. Polymaths are people who actually have knowledge in diverse areas, diverse range of areas. But their key strength is this, to be able to pull in
Yeah.
and connect the dots across these diverse areas. So, for example, I give you some like Leonardo da Vinci is probably the greatest polymath artist, sculptor, inventor, so on. Even in more recent times, if you look at people like, say, even if you look at Elon Musk, he's a polymath. So he can be in electric cars. He can now be on AI. He's there doing SpaceX on the space side, and then he's got his company on that, which is doing things on the neural net. The for those who have actually paralyzed, say, neck down, they're actually working on neural
Neuralink. Yeah.
technology, Neuralink. We're working on technology on that area. You have people like even Winston Churchill was a polymath. Mark Zuckerberg as well, although he's a technology person, but before he started Facebook, he went and studied and learned psychology. Why? Because he had to understand psychology, so understand human behavior, and he had to know how do I get people hooked on Facebook? How do I make it such that there's stickiness, that they are hooked, that they want to spend time? So it's a matter of these multiple fields. So the key thing, that's what we are doing now, very much pushing the polymath agenda with our students and our courses. So like if our students, when they study law, they will study law, but they also have now AIs become part of it. They have legal technology as a subject in the degree. They have new venture creation, which is basically setting up a business, entrepreneurship in their course. We try to get them to build as many skills from public speaking to mooting to in order to come in, even music, dance, whatever that is there, because the key thing, I mean, you're here, you were a great musician from our old days, illusionist and a magician, for those listeners who don't know. And I dabble in music. So we all have some interest. So the idea of being a polymath is one of the reasons why it's important in AI. The more you develop knowledge in diverse areas, the more adaptable you will be. So if you lost your job today because of whatever this area, you can adapt. So the key thing for me in future is to teach our students to be able to become continuous lifelong learners so that they can continuously evolve as technology evolves, because there is going to be that transition where technology comes in and your job may become redundant. But if you are able to, and human beings can adapt, if you are able to adapt, you will always be able to change. And you will have 2 months, pump, I adapt, I change, I adapt. That's why one of the things we did during the pandemic was Project Deep, which was a digital employee and entrepreneur program. I'm sorry, digital employee and program, which in essence, we ran about 15 to 20 courses in digital marketing, social media marketing, data analytics, programming. And because so many people were in danger of losing their jobs, but this then gave them a new skill.
Mm.
And some of them use that new skill to then stay in their company, sort of say, I now can do digital marketing. So I can do the company's digital marketing, or I can now look after your social media platforms, or I've now understood data analytics. And actually, it's quite nice. And suddenly, sometime, 2 years later, I'm at some event and somebody says, introduced me and said, oh, this is our new head of web and all. And the guy looks at me and says, actually, I got the job because I attended your free course.
Right.
and that's how I actually got the job. And I never got to meet you, but I want to thank you today. And we've had people who have gone and got jobs in Singapore just based on a 1 month course, which actually gave them knowledge and skills and a new career opportunity. So during the pandemic, we had pilots in our courses. We had,
Mm.
people from listed entities because they were being retrenched or they were being let go, and it was a chance. So to me, if we, not only companies need to be adaptable, but people also have to see how am I going to stay relevant? Whether it's, I mean, it's like a football player. You play football, you're about 30 something, you retire, and then you're going to wonder now, I'm only like 30 plus, I'm a footballer. What do I do? Do I become a coach? Do I try to become a manager? Do I become an ambassador? I think one of the rare cases where a football player did as well or even better post retirement is probably David Beckham, but very hard to actually find many cases of the players. So just like that footballer who then decides, how do I stay relevant? Everyone over, sometimes a civil servant who retires at 55 or 60 nowadays, a person working in a company, even a politician who stood, became a minister and then lost the election and is not there. Every one of us has to decide, how are we going to stay relevant in the future? And to
So
me, the ways, two things. You go first, then I'll add the two things.
now, how does BAC then provide for people who are now maybe at a crossroads, or they are worried they might be retrenched because they don't have the skills? What's available for them at BAC?
Okay, I mean, we've got degree courses, diploma programs, master's courses. I mean, there's a whole range. So they also now, okay, part of our reason to stay flexible, adaptable is we have a lot of short courses. So for example, okay, to give an example, like say we got our law graduates, and traditionally all law graduates say, I'll do law, then I'll go and do either the bar or the CLP, and then I'll get called, then I'll go and practice law. But actually these days there's so many other options. I mean, we are both law graduates. We're both not in practice. You've gone the full technology route. I've actually set up businesses and then I do a lot of different things. But we are both examples of people who did law degrees and chose to do other things post our law degree than going into practice. But today, there are things like sustainability. ESG is a huge area. We companies need sustainability officers, especially that. So we run a certified ESG professional program. So people can come and do that course and then look at sustainability as an area. Another area now that is new is that we also have a course called Data Protection Officer. The government recently in June passed legislation that any company which has got 20,000 pieces of data, which is could be, has to have a data privacy officer, for example, in the company. Now this creates, and it's going to become more and more. And if you breach rules under this data protection legislation, you're subject to large penalties and fines. So now I tell my law students, hey, this is another thing you can do, because
That's a new job actually.
it's a new job.
Wow.
So you can be the data protection officer. So then you have got cybersecurity. So a person is, cybersecurity. Now I think new things are coming through. They've just set up a council. They're going to be a lot of things. So big listed companies, or hey, somebody on the board, they have to have cybersecurity knowledge. Cybersecurity has a shortage of, I think, something like 3.5 million people worldwide. Malaysia for the next 5 years has a shortage of 150,000. So that's a huge area that we have gone into.
Oh,
But what
really?
I'm trying to tell people is if you're going to have the polymath mindset or the diversity mindset, you're not going to be, oh, I studied law, so I've got to go and practice. I'm saying you could do your law degree and do an MBA, do your law degree, and then you could do your master's in corporate law and look at going in-house, or do it and do ESG or mediation or arbitration or, data privacy or cybersecurity. So, or AI for the matter, and look and see how you can use AI to help speed up processes for like legal research and, that sort. So the key thing I'm trying to tell people is stop thinking in terms of compartments or boxes or pigeonholes or a particular area, start expanding. And it doesn't mean, so this is where, again, sometimes the problem you have is, as I was saying, the regulators is they won't let a law degree like holder, say in Malaysia, or an accounting degree holder to go and do a master's in IT.
Right.
Because they say, oh no, if you want to do master in IT, you must have a degree in IT, for example. Or even if they had, there could be one area you got to do a lot of prerequisites. And this is where the nation can get into trouble with this kind of mindset because you're not allowing your population to go where the need is. you're not allowing your citizens to evolve and move at a faster pace so they can meet the technological changes. So I'm hoping at some point that, so the only exception, like the MBA, can be done by generally anybody with any degree. So you could have a engineering degree and do the MBA, or a law degree and do the MBA. So we use that MBA sometimes with specialist modules in order to tackle some of these things. But we actually have our HRDA Academy, which is also part of the group, which runs all these short courses, 2 months, 3 months. So we give people an option. You can either come in and do a 2-year full-fledged diploma or a 3-year degree, etc. Or let's say I've already got a degree, but I did a degree, say, in something that I can't get a job, and it's hard to move. Come in and do a 2-month, 3-month accelerated course with certification from people like Google and IBM and Microsoft and AWS and Alibaba and all of these kind of courses. Some university hour certification, professionally trained, and you go straight into a job. And you could then use some of these to micro credential and then slowly decide to do an MBA or some master's course. And all of these courses are HRD Corp claimable. So if your employer is contributing the HRD fund, then you can actually do the course. They can actually say, okay, fine, let this person go and study this cybersecurity, or go and study this data protection thing, so you can become our data protection officer. So now the legal officer may pick up a new skill. But it's exciting times, because one hand, a lot of people look at these are all new things they are throwing in, and in a sense, it could be like look at it as a headache. But for us, we look at it and say, okay, this is happening whether we want it or not. So how do we leverage off it? So what we do is we jump in and say, okay, let's create these courses. Let's work with the best partners in this case. So most of these courses we offer, like the ESG course, we offer with the UN Global Compact, Malaysia and Brunei. The mediation course we offer with the ASEAN Institute of ADR. The arbitration with the Malaysian Institute of Arbitrators. In all of these cases, we find what are the key people in this area. They like to work with us because we have a fantastic ability to, offer the courses, the platforms, the classroom space, the ability to market it, the LMS, and then all the extra content from LinkedIn Learning, Coursera, and all the other bits that we can actually package, which they don't have. So all they got to do is they come in as a subject matter expert and partner with us, and we throw in all the everything else and we bundle it. And this gives people a chance to get new qualifications
Right.
quickly, while it's being funded by their own HRDF option.
The way I see it is a lot of us are looking towards the future, and the future is a lot uh, related to technology, right? AI and stuff like that, cybersecurity and stuff like that. But a lot of us, students or people who have been working in a compartment for a long time, they don't really have the propensity for IT stuff or data protection stuff and those sort of things. So they would need to have a lot more options available for them. So I assume you would have some maybe some information sort of or courses or whatever for them to see what other options that they have. Because as much as we would like all of us to grasp AI or tech, I can tell you not everybody will be able to do it for
Yeah.
sure.
No,
Even though some of them could be youngsters, because they just don't have an interest in it, you know.
no, I think the key thing is this. There are different levels. So to give an example on data protection is not really very technology based. If you ask me, it's more rules and laws based. It's like, if I have these 20,000 pieces of data, what can I do with it? What is allowed under the law and what is not allowed in the law? So it's actually really not technological based almost at all, which is why I'm saying it's an ideal cause for our lawyers to go and look at. Now, of course, a lot of the data will involve, databases, access where the data is held. But the question of what you can do with your data, the rights to privacy, and when you infringe that right, and when are you committing an offense, and what can be done, that's all very quite legal like. So even with AI, now actually things have been made more and more simple, in the sense now you can have no code. You can code without code.
Vibe
You
coding.
Vibe coding. So
Uh,
it's with like vibe coding picking up. Now, for some of us, we're still probably not interested in that area. But with it picking up, it's actually been made simpler so that there's greater access. So I use AI a lot, but I use it for my purpose. So example, we're not asking lawyers to go and become seriously code in AI, do this, do the engines. But as a lawyer, if you had an AI engine sitting on top of your legal database, you can actually pull your content out so fast, seamlessly when it comes to doing research. So I remember when we were young, I mean, when our time in the 80s, when they first had LexisNexis and Westlaw and all came up, I mean, the early years, I mean, they were there before that, but it's still early years.
I mean,
Uh,
our time is in the 90s. So 80s where they started, I guess, or
yeah,
earlier than that. Yeah.
we were 89, we finished, we graduated. So I know you're trying to look younger and all
Yeah, I'm
that,
trying to get to the 90s because
uh,
we actually started practicing in 1991 or something like that.
but when you were
So
studying was 87 to,
yeah,
like
89, and then the
90,
bars another
the late
year. So
80s. Yeah, you did the
yeah.
bar in the 90s, I did the CLP. But the
Mm,
thing is this, at that time, I remember the senior lawyers of the time would say, what is this nonsense?
yeah.
Database of going there and looking at it, nothing like going to the library and getting the book out of the shelf. And I mean, after 10 years, 15 years later, then everybody sort of realized that, hey, this is there. But I always tell them this, just like a guy today in KL saying, from years ago, saying, I used to walk to Penang. What is this idea of taking a car? We just walk to Penang lah. It's like 3 days. Then the car comes in where you can do the trip in maybe 2.5 hours. Like, oh, I don't want the car. I want to walk to Penang. So to me, I would tell these guys like, this is so much easier. And then I would remember having conversations with the senior guys like, oh, you don't understand, Raja. The thing is, it's nothing like going to the library and pulling the book out of the shelf and feeling it in your hand as you turn the pages. Because I've always been one of those people who said, okay, that's fine, but I would go for this database. Today with AI, you can actually just put in a natural language query, just put in and say, this is the problem, this is that, give me all the cases that will help me here, this, that. We were doing work on AI in the 90s. At that time, actually, and that time we didn't have the current type of technology.
Yeah.
We actually had initial discussions with some American companies, and we were trying to do things to study, put all the judgments in to sort of be able to study, like, this judge in a drug case, what would his verdict likely to be? How would he decide? What are the grounds of judgment? And we're looking at that in the 90s. Now, at that time, AI was still in fairly, different from what they have now. Uh, People would actually almost, you'd have to sort of interview the best lawyers and jurists in town, then get them, try to figure that, and then put it. It is too slow a model compared to now, where there's actually machine learning. The machine can actually teach itself and learn as it goes along, and the thing keeps developing. So that would have been a crazy thing for us to do then with what was obviously it was not ready. But we were studying things then with American companies to try and see when we were running our IT companies during that time. So I mean, I look at it from a point of view is everyone is using, I mean, whether you've got your Netflix on and switch your channel with your remote or whether you're using a laptop, we all use technology. The only question is the degree. So if you have an aversion to, I mean, totally don't want to use technology, uh, fine, but you would find yourself. So I don't think the next generation is afraid of technology because many of them are native. They are born, I mean, they can take a
Yeah.
handphone. They don't need, I mean, we are one generation where we'll still probably have to look and see, like, how do I use this feature? A 2-year-old child can take that phone and he's
Yeah.
intuitive.
Yeah.
They are technology natives, and they can just find Charlie and come and show you this, that, and you'll be like, what did he do to my phone? I've now been locked out. He's locked the camera. He knows how to adjust. It's amazing. They grew up that way. And when we grew up with our parents, they had the problem, and we have. But every generation is getting closer and closer. I think another key problem you have to look at is how you're going to balance. Because it's not all technology. Human beings have to have chance to be human beings, and humanity needs to develop. And we've got to see how AI should not just be used as a productivity tool, a business tool to leverage and keep, like that ever-ending quest for more and more wealth and more prosperity or success. And I would say today, if you look at with all this technology, we still have massive wars, we still have poverty, we still have so many natural disasters. There's still so many problems.
Right.
So why aren't people, jumping in to see how can I use this technology to actually solve so many of humanity's problems?
Right.
And I think that's where we want to see our students start looking at, because when we do, the work we do, the pandemic, like helping this 500,000 people at that time, if we build an army of people who actually are thinking not of causing other people, not wars, not killing, not, I mean, this kind of thing. Unfortunately, I think all these things are ego related and people just not being happy. And somebody benefits from all of these things. There are always people who benefit from other people's misery, whether, I mean, maybe
Yeah.
for whatever reason. But the question is, if we teach people to do good things, then we could use this to solve things like the food shortage. Say technology, like, growing vegetables, growing things at a far more productive rate, looking at solving the education issues, bringing down the cost of technology and infrastructure so that everybody can afford a device, everybody can actually learn. So, producing the content that is needed. So, improving health conditions. So there's so much that can be done, and I think which is not being done. So I think that's where, I mean, the next thing for us on the education side is to get our next generation of students ready to solve societal problems. And a lot of the young people these days are actually very excited about doing good, are very excited about, a lot of them. They do want to see a better world. They do want to see, and sometimes they can't understand why these older people and these adults are so preoccupied with power and
I think they're
greed.
more exposed through social media like TikTok. They're seeing the suffering. We in our time would have never seen other than some pictures here and there in the newspapers. But nowadays on TikTok you can actually see what's happening in Gaza straight away. Because they're broadcasting live from there. You're
Oh,
seeing
they can
seeing
see it, but the question,
yeah,
unfortunately, a lot of social media, you also see a lot of other rubbish
yeah, that's true.
things there, and they get distracted quite
But
easily. But I see a lot of young people, they are quite vested. And I think the more that we can go out and say, okay, these are problems, stray animals,
mm,
animal shelters is a problem, the aging population. When people get old and they don't have money, and then they don't have homes to stay, how do we sort that problem out? Those who can't afford, the B40 community and those who don't have the money, how? Because the world is very unfair. The rich are really getting richer and richer. We can see this in the last, the billionaires and the multi-billionaires are just getting richer and richer. And the poor, and the cost of living going up, the poor are falling further and further behind. So somewhere in there, people need to come and sort of step in. I mean, we're not a communist country to sort of do it in that way, but people need to sort of come in and step in to say, how do we really redistribute wealth? And I mean, in the early days, talk about things like universal, especially if people become irrelevant and get thrown out of their jobs and are unable to fend for themselves. Okay, we're not looking at a welfare state, but there must be things that we look at to try and make sure that as long as somebody is on this planet, he has the basic rights of food, shelter, all of those things, education, the right to some dignity, should be there. Can't be just a free fall totally.
okay, we're going to wrap up here. Thank you very much to our guest, Raja Singham, for sharing your wisdom on how businesses can remain relevant in the face of challenges and major competition. If you'd like to connect with Rajan or find out more about BAC, just email him at r.singham@bac.edu.my or WhatsApp him at 017 500 6778. So that's it. I'll see you in the next episode of the 10X Factors. Bye.